Hello, Whooper Club fans, and welcome to the Week 6 featured match. We have another riveting match for you this week featuring, for the first time, SteveChuck, who has joined me as a guest host many weeks in the past and is actually here with me today. So go ahead and say hello.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, and he is, of course, the coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets, and his opponent this week was the Buffalo Bouffalant, coached by Nate. So these two have pretty long history of kind of going back and forth. Nate historically, of course, the top performing player in the league, but Steve is nothing to sneeze at, and he's given him a run for his money many times in the past. So we'll see how this match ended up going. We see Arctivish, of course, looking to reclaim its spot on top of the kill leaderboard, and of course Zero Aura blazing fast. Not to mention some other dominating presences over there. And on Steve's side, we've got the return of Galarian Darmanitan Zen mode. So always love to see that one come out, as well as some other staples such as Conkeldurr, Excadrill, and then, of course, the sand motif that the team tends to lean into from time to time as well. So, anything you want to say, Steve, before we get started?
I'll mention that before this match started, Nate and I had both submitted our trades to happen starting next week. We traded some mons to each other, neither of which showed up in this match. And he dropped Bulu and Latias, and I dropped the Darmanitan there. So let's see how all those mons do in their last performances of the season.
All right, yeah, the farewell tour for these Pokemon today. So, yeah, let's see if they can give him a proper send-off here. One last run. All right, that said, we will jump right into it in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so the leads here, we have Cobalion and Slowbro. I'm going to send out our Toxic to start. Might as well.
Slowbro, yeah.
And that
Toxic's
Thunderwave.
really not something I want, but it was nice to paralyze the Cobalion. It's a faster mon, able to stop that.
Indeed.
Eat the Volt Switch, which isn't great, and only get to set up a Reflect for it, and now I'm facing the Latias, so that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe it has a Psy Shock, right? But, oh, nice switch into Togekiss to not have to deal with that Draco Meteor, and then switch out upon seeing that, predicting the Zero Aura, I guess.
Just a double out.
Yeah.
I don't know if predicting, just I think
We'll
this
give you
was
the
the mon
benefit
I
of the
wanted
doubt.
against Latias.
Fair enough. So there's the rocks. And obviously, Gigalith is probably not going to want to stick around here, so back comes Togekiss once again, and that Horn Leech is not going to do a whole lot. And, yeah, a little bit of chip damage from the
reflect helping there, and the flying type, defensive amount of Togekiss.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Fortunately, he gets Zero Aura in on an Air Slash, and it's right about. Hold on, yeah, switching to Slowbro to absorb a physical attack. It's right about now that I should realize I'm in a really bad spot. My two special attackers, Togekiss and Slowbro. Slowbro, I didn't bring any attacks on, and Togekiss just has Air Slash. So my only ways through the Zero Aura really are physical, and after the bulk ups, I don't honestly realize it yet, but
yeah, I'm curious
it's
about
going to be
that light screen there in the face of
difficult to
this
deal with.
boosted Zero Aura.
Well, you see, there was one turn left on Reflect, and set up the light screen now, set up the Reflect next turn. But
fair enough. Yeah, and that knockoff is going to hurt, not being able to get the guts to activate, but still some decent damage nonetheless. But yeah, not going to be enough to put pressure on it.
right.
So now Gigalith is going to try as he boosts again.
Get some Sandstorm chip, which is nice. But I believe coming up here, the big reason for the Gigalith is the Toxic.
Mm-hmm. Now he is on a timer, which will help you out tremendously.
Right. He can't. Well, if he drain punches all my health away, he could live forever in theory.
That's true. But you got something to say about that. At
Iron
low HP, iron defense,
defense,
we've
that'll stop him for sure.
yeah,
I'm not
totally.
worried.
Yeah, you never know. That plasma fist might have missed or something, right? Because that can happen.
It's
For legal reasons, that's a
it's
joke.
going not great.
Yeah, so hoping you can avoid some one shots with drain punch. Oh, and look at that! Gigalith conveniently also setting the Sandstorm to almost take out Zero Aura.
There's the key word almost. I was kind of counting on that KOing and it didn't. But he's real frail now. He can't drain punch Togekiss. So this is effectively the end of Zero Aura.
Alright, so down it goes.
Not quite,
almost. So, yeah, just sacking Mons here, trying to get some damage, and it is going to switch out, which is interesting because it will go down to rocks unless you can get a defog off.
But see, it just goes down to rocks the next turn.
Which is interesting because it's not even in the middle of a turn. Well, oh wait, no, it is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And
decent
here's
stack.
the Latias.
Conkeldur's going to go down.
Easy
so, obviously,
psychic.
you're in a pinch here. Down 5-1.
I ran the calc for this next calc here. Right. This psychic probably does at least 50% without any investment. Probably does more. But I had one win condition, and that was to belly drum up. And he swapped that into Gabalion, which was perfect.
You took a chance. And your speed increases, and you're going to get that Salic Berry from that sub. You are prime here. And can we pull it off? Fire Punch.
That speed
One
increase was huge. The Latias was scarfed. Mm-hmm. So now I outspeed everything. It's a question of any more Rocky helmets. Do I one hit everything? Any priority? Any of that, and I lose here.
Mm-hmm.
2 down.
That's a
3 down.
2 more. Back against the wall.
4 down.
Down. Crit. For good measure. I bet it would have frozen. Can only imagine.
No, I don't freeze. just kill.
Yep. And Ice Punch to finish it. So, man, that's a real instance of why, Bulu not getting Grassy Glide matters. Because that might have been it. But yeah, well played. Crazy match. I know Nate is not too happy about it, but I love to see a good comeback, especially with this guy right here. I mean, just look at him bouncing. You can't say no to that face.
He's been a difficult mod to use this season. Just this is the ideal situation, and most teams I look at it and it's like, oh man, this does really good. Except look at all the priority they have. Nate's team's a little lacking on the priority, so it was able to work. Which thankfully it came through at the end. The one mon that it couldn't KO from this of his, assuming full physical investment, was Flareon.
Gotcha. Wow. That's some sick odds right there. So yeah, it worked out for you. I mean, that switch on that belly drum was, big mistake.
That was huge. If he used a psychic there, that's belly drum fails, and then a second psychic wins the game. Yeah. But I mean, he was respecting other options besides the belly drum Salic Berry set. So.
Right. Yeah. So gotta hand it to Nate. I mean, played pretty well throughout the whole rest of the game, and even that last turn, just kind of weighed his odds and didn't end up working out for him. But yeah, you played your one win condition and you took advantage of it. So yeah, well played to both of you.
I recorded the win. He definitely won the interactions. I won one interaction.
Yeah.
The last one that mattered.
Right. Yeah, and hey, first win for the season for you. So, but that
feels
good. Yeah, finally broke the streak.
Gonna go from here to 3-5 and then to the championship.
That's right. Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, hey, everyone gets in, right? So, all right. Well, thanks for joining me. Like I said, another excellent match, and yeah, from here we will take it to the power ranking. So go ahead and stick around. Thanks for joining, everyone. See ya.
And welcome to the Power Ranking section for Week 6 of the Whooper Club League. I'm your host, as always, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. I'm joined by my co-host Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hello.
And our guest this week is John, coach of the Close Combat Club. How are you doing, John?
Doing well.
Awesome. Then let's hop right into it. Big surprise here, we don't have a change yet again for our Power Rankings top 4. It is, in fact, the Newport Noctels number 1, Seattle Steamrollers number 2, Akron Agrons number 3, and Route 1 Burbs number 4. Doesn't mean all these matches were necessarily clean, and we'll kind of see that right away as we hop into our first match, which pitted the Newport Noctels against the Route 1 Burbs. And you guessed it, the Newport Noctels remain undefeated 6-0 and brought the Route 1 Burbs down to 4-2. So congrats to Elfels on a well-played game overall here. Who got the 4-0 victory, bringing Hydreigon, Heatran, Barraskewda, Rapidash, Galar, Alolan Sandslash, and Tangrowth against Fruit Tacos, Dragapult, Tentacruel, Mamoswine, Darmanitan, Umbreon, and Meowstic. He's really been favoring that Meowstic. We saw in the early game, though, that the early game starts with Meowstic didn't pan out all that well. Hydreigon just made a bona fide Meowstic answer. And then I think definitely the standout part for me was Heatran just abusing Umbreon with Taunt and Magma Storm. Really took out most of its health, as well as most of Tentacruel's health, just with what was generally a somewhat standard set, just slapping on Taunt there and trapping the Umbreon. Really, again, just abused it to take away tons and tons of HP, which was fantastic. Later brought in the Tangrowth. I did see that Mamoswine swap out. Obviously, Risky Biscuit a little scared of missing yet another Ice Cold Crash. He does have a little bit of a history on this. And that Tangrowth also came in clutch with yet another crit onto Meowstic. Really not the best luck with getting crit with knockoff there onto it, which is pretty unfortunate for him. It's just another reason why he really needs to be investing in Showdown Premium. A couple other interesting things to note. Pastel Veil actually coming in clutch on the Rapidash, preventing a poison, which was pretty funny. And honestly, in the end, Elfels won just by breaking down the team and trading things very well, especially with the Tangrowth and Hydreigon. So Hydreigon, again, was a nice check/answer to the Meowstic, but even then later was able to trade off very nicely with the Mamoswine, and eventually just got to trade down KOs until he took away the 4-0 victory. It was very well played, only 34 turns. Honestly, great job to him yet again. Fruit Taco in a little bit of trouble, but he's still remaining in our top 4 for now. Steve, what else do you have to say about this match?
Also wanted to shout out the prediction work of Elfels throughout this battle. When watching it, especially throughout like the first 7 turns or so, every turn seemed to go Elfels' way, whether it be switching in Hydreigon on the Prankster status move, defogging the screens, switching in Heatran on the Toxic. It all was looking for Elfels, which really showed up in the end game with such a dominant victory. And for Risky Biscuit, I'd like to shout out the Earthquake at the end with Hydreigon being down, just picking the move, trying to pick up one more KO, and picked correctly to secure that 4-0 instead of that 5-0. Doesn't matter, still a loss, but the differential could come in quite important later. So we'll have to see if that choice there really makes a difference later on. John, anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to point out how well Elfels used Hydreigon. As a defensive player, I typically think of Hydreigon as more of an offensive threat, but Elfels did a great job of using it more as a utility mod and then as a secondary offensive threat in this match. I was really impressed with both encountering a prankster mod and then being able to defog as well.
I definitely agree with that. I am going through another draft at this moment, and I'm having people tell me Hydreigon's overrated, it's not that good. But look at the utility that Elfels showed with that. Definitely a great point on that. And just more evidence of how he's just using every piece of his team so well this season. Another time bringing the Rapidash and Sandslash and using them effectively. Just overall impressive performance as he moved up to 6-0. So let's move on to our second feature match, and that is going to be Chad and the Seattle Steamrollers, as he took on Sazbo and the Boulder Boulder. Steve, why don't you tell us about this match?
Yes. So Chad brought a team of Liepard, Volcanion, Chansey, Corviknight, Rillaboom, and Volcarona, and piloted them to a 4-0 win against the Boulder Boulders. Throughout the battle, Chad played fantastic pivoting, able to whittle down his opponent's mons throughout the match while not taking much damage and healing it up himself. And that really was the story. When looking through this battle, I didn't find so many, or if any, big fancy plays that ended up winning him the battle. It was just constant pressure that he was healing up, he was whittling his opponent down, and then, before I knew it, all of the Boulder's mons were gone, and that's really the story. Would like to shout out Chansey putting in some work with T-Wave, applying a lot of pressure to nullify some of the really dangerous mons on Joe's team, especially trying to target down that Kingdra to prevent the sweeper there, crippling the Aegislash, which got full parried a couple times throughout the match. So excellent pressure there. Excellent item on Corviknight with the Rocky Helmet. Always great against the Rapid Strike Urshifu. Easy switching, of course, as his big defensive mon and able to deal quite a lot of damage back with it. And just overall, fantastic pivoting. Excellently played, and great match from him. I believe didn't even need to bring in the Volcarona at all. Was able to do it with 5 mons, only losing 2 of them. So great work, Chad. John, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out how well Chad played as a balanced player instead of traditionally Chad is usually an offensive player, but he did a great job of building a very bulky and defensive team as well as offensive. So you saw the Volcanion that the grassy seed was able to boost up its defense and really take out that Bronzong because of it. You saw how well he was using Corviknight and Chansey. Chansey is more of a switching in whenever you really need it to be there, but Corviknight was a lot more of a nuanced play where it had that Rocky Helmet and it was specifically designed for that Urshifu. And you see how well Chad was really using that Corviknight, where he had many opportunities to Brave Bird when Corviknight, or he had the opportunity to Brave Bird into Urshifu when Corviknight was out, but instead opted to Roost to really keep its health up and keep up that chip damage with the Rocky Helmet. So good for him to be able to play many different play styles.
The Chansey and Corviknight is a tried and true combo, I think, and Chad's piloting it very well. I'd also like to give a shout out to his first 2 moves of the match missing, the T-Wave miss and the Steam Eruption miss. Very excellent, very nice. And also, we want to talk a little bit that we see a Stone Journer on Sasbo's side. Yes, they're required to bring mons every mon at least once, but this Stone Journer actually could have put in quite a bit of work, as Chad did not realize that it outsped him, didn't overpredict, didn't even realize that it outsped, and a misplay turned into what appeared to be a pretty good play, which pretty comical overall. Unfortunate for Sasbo that maybe Stone Journer of all things could have put in a little work, but it certainly did, and Chad was able to walk away with another victory to bring him up to 6-0. And just a sneak preview of what we're going to talk about a little bit later, those 2 6-0 teams are guaranteed this bye, so well deserved to the 2 of them, putting at the top of our power rankings. So the last match we have to talk about is our number 3 team, the Akron Agrons, coached by Joey, as he took on the Mighty Miltanks, coached by Tony. And John, why don't you take us away on this match?
Sure. So as Nate said already, it was the Akron Agrons versus the Mighty Miltanks. Joey, the coach of the Akron Agrons, was able to do a 4-0 win against them. The thing that really stuck out to me, well, first, Joey brought Tornadus, Theron, Kiram, Sylveon, Arcanine, Seismitoad, and Luxray, while Tony brought Azumarill, Celesteela, Venusaur, Barbercole, Dragonite, and Torkoal. And what really struck out to me is that Tony didn't so much. Tony made a lot of very high risk, high reward plays, and that were kind of out of the typical ballpark. So you saw Torkoal with a curse, which usually Torkoal would run something like Iron Defense to have some kind of really strong fighting type move, while Joey was really making a lot of very consistent switches and plays into those mons that just, at the end of the day, were able to give him a lot more momentum than Tony was able to build for himself. That being said, I think Tony's really developing as a player and really trying to figure out, well, what is like a normal coverage move that another mon would bring? That really was his underdoing. So if you were watching the match, you could see that Joey was bringing some pretty tried and true coverage moves on his mons. So Kiram was bringing Earth Power, was able to really do a lot of damage into Torkoal as it was trying to set up. Arcanine was bringing a very stereotypical Wild Charge, and he was really getting off a lot of damage on like Azumarill and Barbercole, switches from Tony. In all of these plays that wouldn't necessarily be unusual for an experienced player, but maybe for a newer player would really throw them off guard.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much where everything comes together there. And the Arcanine, I think, was definitely the typical example of that as well. Very strong fire moves, but also the electric coverage and extreme speed put in so much work for him. And maybe Tony just wasn't prepared for it, but Joey also piloted that very well. So a big shout out to him. With Roost Kiram was pretty cool to see. We're seeing the substitute versus substitute at the beginning was pretty funny, but of course the story was 2 hurricane misses in a row, getting more misses, more hacks against Joey. That's just pretty typical, huh? Anything else you'd like to add on, Steve, before we wrap things up on this one?
You mentioned the hurricane misses 2 in a row against Venusaur that nearly cost him the Tornadus. And honestly, what that comes down to is just loving your mons. He clearly does not love that Tornadus enough. Should probably have looked to trade it away, but didn't. And mistakes.
I can think of a great person you could do.
Ooh, interesting. Well, maybe we have a villain here in the tournament if he doesn't love his Pokemon enough. We'll keep an eye on Joey in the future. But that's going to do it for the top 4. We do have 2 more teams that we do want to keep an eye on. As mentioned before, we're getting close to the time for playoffs. All teams will make playoffs, but we go over the top 4 in power rankings specifically because the top 4 teams get buys. Again, the top 2 teams are 6-0, so they are guaranteed buys. And while there are quite a few people that could potentially make playoffs, we really only want to talk about these other 2 here. And these are 2 teams that just faced off here in Week 6. The Cincinnati Incineroar and the Close Combat Club, both 3-3, both have a chance to sneak into that last spot, potentially, depending on how things turn out here. The 2 did face off. It was a very long, very lengthy match that we don't need to go into too much detail on, but since we have you here, John, why don't you tell us just a little bit of your thoughts on this match and how you got to this point being 3-3 with lots of ups and lots of downs.
To be honest, I was pretty disappointed with this match, and I really felt like my season has been defined by Jirachi, and specifically Serena Grace, and being able to either get like a lucky win or get a really crushing unlucky loss. I feel like I just haven't been able to play it super well. So my team this season has been built around pivots, and while I've been pivoting well, I don't feel like I've been able to gain enough momentum in matches through that pivoting. So that's really something I'm trying to work on, and getting my powerful mons in the right spots to be able to do enough damage to really build my momentum.
Yeah, definitely agree. That whenever I see you at your best, it's whenever you're pivoting into those big mons. The times I think I see you at your worst is when you're pivoting into more pivoting and not really able to get anywhere because your opponent just has the right mons or the right switches in there. To that end, too, you've also made one transaction, thought about so many more. You already mentioned the Jirachi, too. You decided to hang on to that and a lot of your other big mons. Talk to us a little bit about your thinking as you made a transaction trading away Swampert for Heracross and anything else that you were considering.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it just really came down to, well, do I have enough power? And am I giving Jirachi the chances that it needs to really excel? And so to the latter question, I thought probably not, because I really had only used it as a choice scarfer and really only been thinking about it offensively. Kind of like last season I had run Silvally and had used it very, very offensively the whole season. And I was kind of thinking about Jirachi as kind of a pseudo Silvally, when I really should have been thinking about it more as a support and pivot mon. As well as doing other things too. It can do other things. It just needs the right opportunity to do so. But I traded Swampert specifically because I really felt like I needed more power. I felt like I kind of wanted a fighting type, especially to get rid of my ice weakness, since Joey does have Kyurem, and Kyurem is kind of my worst enemy on any of my teams because I play more defensively, and Freeze Dry is so hard to play when you play defensively. That's a big reason why I brought Heracross, and it just does so well when it has a lot of pivoters to give it support.
Absolutely true. And Heracross is, I think, a very cool mon that has multiple very good sets that are so painful to try to prep for. I think that's a very interesting, cool move. So I'll get back to that Jirachi. As you said, your season's revolved around this thing. The Wish set this time, boy, I think that was really the key piece in making this a, by the way, 183 turn match. Wow. Do you think maybe you figured out something else a little bit new about Jirachi? Or did you kind of learn throughout the match a little bit what kinds of things you wish you had brought? Or how did it kind of develop throughout that match even?
Well, I really felt like I've really figured out how to use Jirachi as a Wish user in that match. And the thing that I wish I had done was really invest more in my offense. So I was really struggling between whether I should bring Exploud as a choice scarfer or if I should bring something like Salamence as almost a choice bander, just to have some kind of extra breaker involved in my team. And looking back on the match now, I almost wish that I had brought Salamence as more of a breaker, because I felt like Exploud really wasn't doing as much damage as it could have been, just because the speed tiers were a little bit off. So Exploud was a little slow against the Cincinnati Incineroars, and Salamence probably wouldn't have been.
Yeah, So again, you two are the teams that we're looking to maybe take away that number 4 spot. How are you feeling coming up to the last couple of weeks here? Again, you said your team's starting to come together. You're starting to feel maybe a little more confident in team building overall?
We'll see. Some weeks it really feels a lot better, and some weeks it doesn't. It's very up and down at this point.
Definitely understand that. With only a couple weeks left, really, whenever we get to the playoffs, that matters. And you've shown the last couple seasons, making the semifinals, both the last seasons, that you are still someone to threaten the rest of the league. Anything else that you would like to add, or any questions you'd like to add on here, Steve?
I mean, it was a great, this match in particular, great match, long match. Could make us a lot of ad revenue if we ran ads and if we covered it in detail. But I don't have the patience for that. And I mean, on the season in general, ups and downs, some big wins, some big losses, but who am I to talk about that this season?
Absolutely, I feel that. And I guess to kind of wrap things up with this topic, John, you have lost every single odd week and won every single even week. So kind of interesting that you really are going up and down so dramatically every single week. Let's see if maybe you can stabilize a little bit just in time for playoffs. It seems like you're well on your way to do so. And to kind of wrap things up before we talk about the schedule, we did mention it, but Week 6 was the cutoff for trade. So I want to go over those just a little bit, and if you all have anything else you'd like to add to them, we can talk about that a little bit more in detail. But we covered whenever Chad was here, the Seattle Steamrollers did make all 3 of their trades very early, effective only Week 3. They traded away their Landorus Therian for Landorus Incarnate, a move mentioned to kind of improve the grassy terrain interaction there. Traded away Moltres Galar for Frostless, Porygon Z for Volcarona. Once again, getting a Volcarona that really was a comfort pick, I think, overall for Chad, and it seems to have served him quite well. Speaking of, the other undefeated team did make a trade earlier. The Newport Noctowl traded away Regice for Sandslash Lola. Also pretty interesting. Got another Spiker, got another Rapid Spinner for him. I think that made a ton of sense there. As we talked about, you, John, traded away the Swampert for a Heracross, a couple of 120-point mons there, just getting a lot of brute strength and power. The Akron Agrons, effective Week 7, a 5-1 team, it did make a big transaction. They dropped the Copperajah for Crocodile to get something that was a little more points-wise, but something else that could kind of round out their top core, while also being a physical attacker and adding to get another Stealth Rocker, perhaps just in replacement of Copperajah. And to do so, dropped Stoutland for Carbink and Spiritomb for Cutiefly, a couple of 20-point mons that still can set rocks and sticky webs, respectively, which is kind of interesting, honestly. But of course, the 2 big moves happened between your 2 regular co-hosts here, your Buffalo Bouffalant and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets, made quite a few trades here. We traded with each other Cramorant for Tangela, so yes, I have my favorite one. Once again, Tangela is in my possession, and to correspond with that move, I traded away Latias for Noivern, Tapu Bulu for Victini, and Flareon for Claydol, whereas Steve, at the beginning of the draft, traded away Drapion for Conkeldurr, and then also to supplement this move, traded away Raikou for Dracozolt and Darmanitan Galar for Tyranitar. So we can talk about each other's here a little bit. I see you're going all out on sand. I know you have Excadrill already, acting the Dracozolt Tyranitar. That's pretty funny. I'm excited to see if anyone has the ability to stand up to that core or not in this league. What do you think?
It's honestly I'm interesting to see how it goes. My season, as everyone is probably aware, is in the crapper. But things are looking good. Wasn't too trading away Darmanitan was interesting. I think Darmanitan wasn't bad, although it really didn't shine until this last week after the trade was already declared. But I figured, I have the sand mode. I haven't really used it enough. What's one way to really force it? And that's bring another sand setter, bring another sand abuser, and just say, this is my team. If you can beat Sandstorm, you can beat me.
That's pretty much all you need. And we're going to playoffs, as I said before. It only really matters in the playoffs. Funny that the schedule maker made it that this season everyone makes playoffs. Pretty convenient timing, huh?
I mean, there were reasons for it, but great timing for me.
Absolutely true. And I could talk a little bit about my trades again. Latias for Noivern, Bulu for Victini, and Flareon for Claydol, along with the exchange of Tangela and Cramorant. Honestly, Latios and Bulu being up at the top weren't really doing it for me. I started to figure them out a little bit more by the end of the season, but honestly, this was mainly about getting a little more consistency overall. I didn't see a time that I was going to use Cramorant. Getting Tangle in there, something that I really know how to use, was really nice, especially something that could maybe pivot a little more and had more reliable recovery. than something else like grassy terrain. Additionally, getting Victini was a big move for me. I think fire types match up very well against some of the top teams overall in the league. Victini in particular is very nice for having a high speed tier. Additionally, Zero Aura I've started to figure out a whole lot more too, but it's not something I want to build my team around. I definitely like electric types, and having those high tier electric types has been outstanding, but I don't want it to be the star of the show. I kind of want it to be the secondary user there, so maybe introducing something like the Victini will kind of take some of the pressure off of Zero Aura and let it shine in other ways. So kind of excited to see what I can do with that. But again, we're pretty much out of it. We're looking for the playoffs later, and there are going to be some fire matches there. But before we get into that, we do still have week 7 of the schedule, which we'll go over very quickly here. We've got a tough match here. Again, these are when all these trades are fully in effect now. We've got 2 weeks to figure out our new teams. We've got the Bouffalant facing off against the Noctowls. Again, it seems like a mismatch here, but I do have a strong history in the league, and this could be a very, very exciting one. I've also got some rivalry here going on. The Agrons and the Wobbuffets, brotherly love going on here with once again, which seems like a mismatch, but we have 2 teams with very new rosters trying themselves out. The Route 1 Burbs and Seattle Steamrollers circle this one for sure. The Route 1 Burbs need to prove themselves a little bit after dropping to another very good top team. This is the last of the top 4 that they have not faced, and they lost to each of the other 2, so that's very important for them. The Cincinnati Incineroars and Summit County Psyducks. The Psyducks got their first win, but the Incineroar desperately need another win to keep them in the hunt, especially if the Burbs aren't favored. Close Combat Club in Zanesville, Zigzagoons, similar story here. The Close Combat Club really needs to think their act together a little bit and get a little more consistent. The Zigzagoons are a good opponent to do that against. And the Mighty Mill Tanks and Boulder Bulldors, while they may seem out of it, these 2 teams really desperately need to stabilize. I think especially the Bulldors have had a little bit of a rough stretch here and need to figure out what they're doing here. Any other comments from either of you 2 about the schedule or anything else before we wrap things up today?
Lots of important matches coming up this week. It really will shape it, and it's some good opportunities. We get some conflicts between the top teams. We get some of the other top teams going against historically strong teams. So those first 3 matches, especially, really excited to see how all those go and how this league shakes out from there.
Absolutely. So again, like you said, some awesome matches. Maybe some playoff previews here too, which could be very, very cool. So that'll wrap things up for week 6. Hope you enjoyed this in the feature match. Thank you, John, for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.